So, in this week's short, we are starting to think about the number 100. And that is because we are approaching our 100th episode, or we are in the week of our 100th episode. And despite having studied quite a lot of maths in my earlier years, I managed to miscalculate this. So, because we're now doing twice weekly episodes, I have to say episode 100 has kind of snuck on me a little bit faster than I thought. Nonetheless, today and indeed the longer episode that will come next Tuesday are in honor of the milestone that is managing to have got 100 episodes under our belt. And definitely feels like a milestone. It's a nice round number and worth celebrating to still be showing up here 100 episodes later. And I have to say that because I am now doing weekly without breaks, but also twice a week, that 100th episode definitely came up a lot faster than it seemed like it would at the beginning of this new season in September. So, how is the number 100 relevant to you guys? Well, it's been coming up quite a lot in my coaching, actually. So, I do often get clients bringing to me some of their issues and difficulty with public speaking, having to do presentations. Maybe they're presenting to their department or on behalf of their region. And they express to me, some of their concerns around having to do that stuff. And they're always obviously very reassured to know that they're not the only one, despite us all kind of knowing that public speaking is meant to be up there as one of the worst fears that people have. Despite that, my clients always seem to be sort of surprised when I tell them that it's very rare that I have a client coming up and telling me that they love public speaking and they feel like they were born to do it. It's really mostly the opposite. And I wonder whether, because of the environments that they're in, those kind of corporate environments, and they look around and they see others at their level really confidently operating, they sort of assume that it's almost a rite of passage that they should have been through, to become really confident with public speaking or to be born with it. And so they see others around them and expect that this is not your kind of normal, slice of the general population. And they kind of don't really remember that actually this is a generalized public fear that we all have. Um, and so this is where the number 100 comes in, because of course we do a lot of work in those one-to-one sessions where we drill down into the different aspects of what it means for them in the context specifically that they're needing to present in. And these are always going to be so different, and they're going to have different dynamics. They're going to have different relationships and stakeholders that they're going to need to influence. And all of that takes a lot of breaking down. But the theme that I wanted to bring today was the idea that some of it is just getting those miles under your belt, or those steps under your feet. And we've come up with various analogies that suit my different clients and their different sporting interests. Laps of the swimming pool. But I think it can be quite easy to almost sort of problematize the things that we are struggling with in terms of mastery. So we can say, well, it's just me, I've never been good at public speaking, or yeah, it just doesn't suit my personality. And make it about us, make it about our deficiencies and our preferences. Whereas often it is a case of, this is not something that you've had to do every single day in your working life, or even necessarily every single week. And now maybe you're being expected to just do it naturally, as if it's like the most natural thing. Of course, it's not going to be. So, what I often do with clients is we say, look, if you do nothing else, if we don't break this down, if we don't analyze it, if we don't understand how it relates to your personality and your specific stakeholders, if you can just get the miles in between now and next year, and you can get your kind of however many you commit to doing, I really like to check in with you then and see where you are, just by getting the miles in. And I think this is the kind of personal aspect of today's message as well, which is, coming and sitting here behind the mic 100 times. It's been in different contexts. Initially, we were in a studio. I had my lovely friend Arti with me, and we had all the support of the production team, which is how I came into contact with my now producer, Urjan. So we've gone from that very kind of in-person setting to now, me behind a screen in the Zoom, sometimes on my own and sometimes interviewing guests. But some things do happen when you're doing this on a very regular basis, especially now that I'm doing these shorts. And interestingly, I've now taken on some clients who specifically want to talk to me about what it is to be able to talk, not exactly off the cuff, but, to be able to talk in a more relaxed way behind the microphone. And one of the things I share with them is that, for quite a long time, my podcast producer and editor, Urgent, would tell me about my ums and my ahs, and he'd have to edit them out. And then at a certain point, he said to me, you know what? I'm not having to do it as much anymore. And now I'm coming on these, and these are completely unedited episodes. And it wasn't something that was going to happen overnight. He told me that many episodes ago, but I couldn't just switch the next time and edit out, mentally edit out all of my ums and ahs. It took just time. It just took mileage. It took getting those steps, done. And over time, it has evolved and it has become a more natural process. And so for me, I do care about mastery. And I also know from a positive psychology perspective that mastery is a really important aspect of psychological well-being. It's one of the dimensions. Self acceptance is, relationships are, autonomy is, and another aspect is mastery. And yes, if you are, I don't know, a carpenter or a surgeon or somebody with a very clear and quite tangible expertise, mastery might feel very obvious. But often for those of us who are knowledge workers, it can be less clear. I certainly liked the mastery element in coaching and in podcasting, that there was a bit of a craft that needed to be cultivated. And I like that element of practice and reflecting and improving. But in other aspects of knowledge work, it might feel like there is less of that kind of mastery. Like, even if we knew our field really well, that keeps evolving, right? And so it's not quite the same as having, being kind of a skilled watchmaker or something like that. But I would argue that there are a few things that we can pursue mastery in, which can be generalized in knowledge work, in office work. And I think presentations and being able to pitch and make sales calls and some of these things are elements that we can develop mastery in. And I think it's a much more exciting journey when we choose to develop mastery in something than when we kind of expect ourselves to have a natural ability in something and then berate ourselves when we're not as good as the others who stand up, look incredibly off the cuff, but we really have no idea what has gone into them being able to stand up and do that. And so, with that in mind, I just wanted to get you guys to think about, which areas are blockers for you at work right now, which could turn into mastery challenges. And my mastery challenge to you is, what is something that you could set yourself up to do 100 times? Not question it, reflect on it when you do it. Definitely, we know that deliberate practice, and that is when you do something and then you reflect on how it went afterwards, that massively accelerates our learning curve. But what is something that you could commit to doing 100 of, and then seeing whether you really are a natural at it or whether you are, your personality just doesn't suit it? Another example, just to give you some food for thought, where this comes up is my clients that tell me, I can't do networking events. I hate them. That kind of very standard, sterile conference environment where you're expected to suddenly just be able to know the right moment to infiltrate a group and set up sparkling conversation. That type of scenario is a particular fear of, many of my clients. And again, there, what we've said is, let's just get a number of them under our belt. And then let's have this conversation again. It's not like we're not going to do anything else, but let's check in when you're 30 in, when you're 50 in, and then let me know what's really working for you. And that way, you don't need to see each one as such a test either. It doesn't need to kind of be this big, what's the word, judgment on your performance. It's just you doing it, reflecting and carrying on. There's an element of testing there, there's an element of iterating. All of that thinking is much more expansive, much less judgmental on ourselves, and much more of that learning mindset and that growth mindset. So I'm wondering if you can now come up with an area that you're willing to set yourself that 100 challenge on. If there is, let me know. I would absolutely love to hear about it. And definitely where you are faced with one of those challenges, whether it's a sales call, whether it's, doing interviews even, when you're faced with one of those things that maybe just gets your heart rate up or makes your stomach a bit fluttery, have a think about if that's something you could turn into 100 on, and I would love to hear how that goes. I look forward to connecting with you next time, and thanks for being with me on this 100 episode journey. Bye bye.